Welcome back, brothers and sisters. I am Braden. That is Tim. This is Second Legacy, and thank you so much for stopping by to support this new channel. And if you are new, please consider hitting that subscribe button, like the video, share the video, make sure that notification bell is on because we would love to have you be a part of this channel as we go forward to pass the blessing of the Second Amendment along to the next generation. But my brothers and sisters, it is the weekend, but that does not mean we cannot touch on something that is incredibly important. Well, at least it's the weekend when we're filming this. The assault weapons ban has made another appearance in the Senate. Now, of course, it's the usual suspects. There's a lot of things we're going to break into. This is incredibly important to break down, not just if this bad boy has a chance, but also get into the mindset of what these people are doing. If you don't happen to be a huge pro-2A advocate, listen to the things that we're about to show you. Tim and I are about to break down where their mindset is around your rights. Take out the Second Amendment, put in your First Amendment rights, put in any right that you can imagine, and then imagine the same clip. That's what we're trying to do because that's what this channel is all about, talking on a deeper level. So with that, I'm going to toss it over to Tim. Tim, we've got a new thing from Dianne Feinstein's website. Is that what I'm seeing here?
Well, I wouldn't call it a new thing. I would say this is the same
fair.
thing she's been trotting out since the 90s, right? But yes.
I guess that's fair.
Right?
It's new today.
Here we go again with another assault weapons ban. And they always introduce these literally days after some tragedy occurs somewhere in America. So literally these bans are pre-written and they're constantly being worked on, updated, looking for ways to water them down, make them more palatable to the public. And once again, Dianne Feinstein, who historically has done just that, she's been behind most, if not all of these, she's done it again. So she's announced her intention to introduce a bill. So Mr. Producer, if you could throw up image number 1, this is from Dianne Feinstein's actual website. And so many times politicians will post to their websites their intent to introduce legislation. So right now we don't have a bill number for you to call your representatives to talk about. All we have is her intent to introduce her assault weapons ban. Now, we all know, it goes without saying, that an assault weapon is a made-up term, but we're going to use the terminology just for the sake of clarity in today's video. We're not saying that assault weapons are real things. So anyway, she's planning to introduce this bill, and it is dangerous. It's dangerous because it is pretty watered down. And you can tell by looking at just from the Obama era introductions of this bill. We had an introduction. There was a 2021, a 2022 assault weapons ban that went public. And now here we are with 2023 with another one being introduced. They've changed significantly over the years and the various introductions of these bills. And this one is dangerously watered down. So to the point where I'm concerned that gun owners are going to look at the verbiage of the bill, at least the high level bullet points that we have to work with today, because we don't have the full wording of the bill yet. And they're going to look at this and go, oh, well, it isn't really that bad. And so they're not really going to be bothered to contact their representatives. They're not going to go out like we did during the Obama administration in front of every state capitol and protest. This is dangerously neutered. And I want to get into the bits and pieces of it. But before we do that, let's hear from Dianne Feinstein. I want you to hear her words from her mouth in 1995, and these words were recorded after the passage of the 1994 assault weapons ban, which we already know from our own government studies had a net zero effect on reducing crime. This is what Dianne Feinstein had to say about her intent during her part in passing the assault weapons ban of 1994. Mr. Producer, please roll clip 2.5.
Gotten 51 votes in the Senate of the United States for an outright ban, picking up every one of them. Mr. and Mrs. America, turn them all in. I would have done it. I could not do that. The votes weren't here.
So it's important to point out that she said out loud the quiet part, because what she'll tell you today is, we don't want to take your guns away. We just want reasonable restrictions. But those are her words from 1995, where she clearly articulated the intent to take them all away if she had the votes. You're being lied to. And you'll see this lie being repeated in social media by the anti-gunners. And I see it on my Twitter. I saw it yesterday on my Twitter. Oh, calm down. You're overreacting. Nobody wants to take your guns away. Really? Dianne Feinstein just said it. And you heard her say it. So But she's not the only one. So she's the one that's introduced it into the Senate. There will be a companion bill that is going to be introduced into the House. Braden, would you like to share with our audience what that looks like?
Oh, baby, would I love to pick that up, because one of the things that just really gets my goat is when you see the exact same people doing the exact same infringements across the board. This is what I'm about to show you. David Cicilline is a House member from Rhode Island. Now, this might sound familiar, the name. This is what he said in a House committee hearing last year around the H.R. 1808 assault weapons ban that passed the House but did not pass the Senate. Mr. Producer, if you could play clip number 4, this is David.
So spare me the bullshit about constitutional rights.
Okay, so that's a very short clip, but it's pretty powerful. In one clip that Tim just showed you, you have a sitting senator who's been there for, to be quite honest, almost as long as I've been alive, saying, Mr. and Mrs. America, turn them all in. That's our intent. If I had the votes, I would have done it. Then you fast forward, the exact same person is putting out another bill, and you've got David Cicilline in the House offering a companion bill, and that's what he has to say about your rights. Again, going back to the introduction of this video, take out guns, put in First Amendment, put in warrantless search and seizure, put in whatever right that you want to put in there, and then how would it feel? How would it land? It would land a little bit different, because the Second Amendment is a punching bag for a lot of these people. There's a whole industry devoted to it. But that's what we're trying to accomplish on these videos, on this channel. Second Legacy is about bringing people into the fold, deeper conversations to show you what they're doing to everyone's rights, Democrats, Republicans, independents. I don't care. This is something that is not acceptable in any light. And now I'm going to toss it back over to Tim, and we're about to start going through some of the bullet points of this assault weapons ban. Tim, you want to take it away, and we'll kind of set up camp on each one?
Yeah, absolutely. And I just want to drive home how infuriating the comments from Cicilline are to me. Because he says right there, he has zero regard for your constitutional rights. He didn't say Second Amendment. He said, spare me this BS about your rights. Your rights. Mm-hmm. That's right. Plural. That's not singular. Okay? This is where these politicians' minds are. You're a plebe, you're a peasant, and you are subservient to them and their whims and their will. And he made it crystal clear in that 10-second soundbite where his head is. And that is what's disgusting about this. And so let's go ahead and move into the bullet points that Feinstein posted to her website. Now, I also think it's worth mentioning that she's not the only one in the Senate that is backing this bill. So when a bill gets introduced, they're going to find co-sponsors, right? So in this case, we have Dianne Feinstein, typical culprit. We have Richard Blumenthal, typical culprit. And then we have Chris Murphy, another known suspect. So they're the ones backing this bill. So here we go. Bullet point number 1. Under the proposed assault weapons ban of 2023, let's call it, because it doesn't have a bill number yet, it bans the sale, manufacture, transfer, and importation of 205 military-style assault weapons by name. Owners may keep existing weapons. And this is where we get into the extremely dangerous nature of this bill and it being watered down, because this isn't the first time they're going to mention owners may keep existing weapons. So they want to ban 205 different firearms by name. Now, they may also ban other firearms by feature, because that's a common practice within these bills. These things have been introduced multiple different times with multiple different wording, but all trying to accomplish the same thing. Mm-hmm. And so with this first bullet point, 205, they're going to name them, and they're going to be just outright banned by name. But if you got them, you can keep them. What are your thoughts on that?
Right there. No, you just nailed it. Like, oh, so good. So that first bullet point, we can't produce anymore because they equate to terrible tragedies. We can't transfer them because they equate to terrible tragedies. However, every single one of them, by like 25 million to 100 million, depending on estimates, exist in the United States. You can still keep those. Yeah. So right off the bat, you have a complete just detachment from reality. In one argument, and I say this on my own channel all the time, the pillars of gun control cannot stand when you look at them all together. They boil them down to bullet points, and they say, look how effective this is, and they repeat it over and over and over again. However, if you look at what they bring to you, in one part of that sentence, and this is just the first bullet point, right. They say we can't buy them, we can't manufacture them, we can't transfer them because they have X outcome. But you can keep every single one of them. Doesn't that undermine the entire point? Doesn't that fly in the exact face of what you just said?
Right.
Well, yes, it does. But that's the point. To Tim's earlier introduction, this is about watering it down to make it palpable. This is just the first thing. When was the last time you heard a gun control proposal or proponent stop at something they passed? When in the Senate this past year, when they passed the bipartisan Safer Communities Act, that was the whole red flag funding thing and also raised the waiting term for 18-year-olds. Immediately, Chris Murphy came out to the press and was saying, this is a good first step. It's really great we did this, but there's more to come in the future. There's more work to do. Immediately.
Right. Yep. And that's what they're doing here. This is a foot in the door. This bill is so watered down that they're hoping it'll be palatable to some wishy-washy Republicans in the House, because they're saying, like you said, we think these things are too dangerous to be in the hands of American citizens. There's 100 million of them already out there, but they're too dangerous. So we're not going to allow you to make any more and import any more, but you can keep the ones that you got, because they're not going to be used because this bill is going to save you, is the presumption. But we know that's asinine at face value. So this is a do nothing bill, but it is doing something. Its intent is not to curb violent crime in any way. Its intent is to kick that door open, because when they get this passed, should they get this passed through the legislature and get it on Biden's desk, they're going to say, well, look, we tried to leave you guys with them. Obviously, they're clearly not responsible enough to own them. So now we're going to have to amend this. And here's the assault weapons, ban of 2023 amendment for 2024. And they're just going to keep adding on to it. If you think for a moment that they'll pass this bill and this is where it ends, you're horribly naive. This is the door opener. And this thing is extremely dangerous because of how watered down it is. I don't want to keep saying that.
Well, no. But it's an important thing that you need to bear out. I mean, honestly, I expect you to say it a few times in this video, because there's so many points that are watered down to that direct outcome. But before we continue on with the bullet points, I just want to say the odds. I'm not telling you that, this channel is not going to say, sound the alarm, they're going to pass this tomorrow, because in full reality, where we sit with this, it would have to go from the Senate and then have to be accepted by the Speaker of the House. In this case, the Republican Speaker of the House is controlling everything that goes on that floor, just like Pelosi did forever. So the odds of this passing are slim. But the important piece to dive into is it shows you where their mindset's at. It shows you their desires, and it shows you what they're trying to accomplish. Even if it's not in the short term viable, long term, you will see these things again, because they keep them on file. That's what they do.
Yep. Absolutely.
Anyway,
and I would say that
I digress.
I would say that the threat is slightly elevated. I don't trust McCarthy as far as I can throw him, but I agree with the assessment that he would have to bring this to a floor vote. And as long as the partisan bickering continues and the deadlock in DC continues, which I'm a huge advocate of deadlock, it means they're not doing anything destructive.
Absolutely.
If the deadlock holds and he just wants to be an obstructionist, which I hope he is, that would be great. But I don't trust him, because in my mind, he's a rhino, and the true nature of this bill, again, being so watered down, there may be something out there that the anti-gunners can promise him, say, well, look, if you just give us this neutered bill, we'll even take some of it out. We'll rearrange it. We'll even take, bits and pieces more of it out. We'll take the magazine element out of it. Just give us this in exchange. If that type of negotiation happens, this can still be a threat. So I don't want to say it's not going to pass. It does have a low chance of passing, but I don't want to completely dismiss it and say, don't worry about it. Because again, I'm really worried about how watered down this thing is. So let's hit number two.
Go with the old trust but verify.
Exactly. So this will ban any assault weapon with the capacity to utilize a magazine that is not a fixed ammunition or a fixed ammunition magazine and has one or more military characteristics, including a pistol grip, forward grip, barrel shroud, a threaded barrel, a folding or telescoping stock. They left out flippy thing that goes up. And once again, they say, but hey, guys, owners may keep existing weapons. They've said it twice now. So again, can you see what they're trying to do? That last sentence, owners may keep existing weapons. They keep saying that.
Yep.
Because this is a tactic that they're using because they want to keep you home, not calling your representatives, not sending those emails, not showing up at your state capitol protesting. They're trying to slip this under the radar, and gun owners are going to look like, well, come on, man, I got to keep my stuff. If anything, my stuff's just going to become more valuable. I ain't too worried about this one.
Well,
please don't be that person.
let's go to number 3, where we might see another appearance. Bans magazines and other ammunition feeding devices that hold more than 10 rounds of ammunition, which allows shooters to quickly fire many rounds without needing to reload. Owners may keep existing magazines. Tim, I think you're onto something.
There's that sentence again.
That's the first 3 points they may keep. Again, I would like to highlight the fact that the entire premise of this bill is that these things do terrible damage. They should not exist in our society, but you can keep them forever.
Right.
It makes no sense at all unless there's a deeper motive, which you've hit on so well. And honestly, this is a watered down bill to get the door open. That's exactly what it is.
And there's an interesting nuance to this magazine thing that I want to bring up when we get to it.
Oh, absolutely.
So the next bullet point is it requires a background check on any future sale, trade, or gifting of an assault weapon covered by the bill. So this bill, unlike previous bills, which just said, and these were under the Obama administration, they would just say, you can keep them if you got them, but when you die, they go to the state for destruction. They could not be gifted to family members. They could not be sold or transferred. When you died, they went to the state. You basically lost your investment in your firearms. And they know that's a hard pill to swallow. And what they're trying to do is to keep people from getting up in arms about a ban like this, right? They want to slowly turn the temperature up on us. And so, and over time, right? It's a generational strategy. And so,
frog, baby.
Yep, the proverbial frog in the boiling water. So this requires a background check. So basically, you can keep them if you got them. You can go ahead and even sell them if you want to. You're just going to have to submit to an additional background check, which there's already a background check. I think what they're talking about here is the gun show loophole, right? You won't be able to go to your neighbor and say, hey, man, would you like to buy this AR-15? I'm buying a new one. You couldn't do that transfer because it's going to require a background check. That's what this bill is going to cause. We're going to get rid of the private sale of firearms. That would be my assumption based upon this wording.
That's a universal background check. That's a backdoor to universal background checks.
Precisely.
And so now we're getting into the really interesting part, because they always layer these things, guys. I grew up in the time frame of Shrek, so it's like a parfait. It's multiple layers of goodness. Dating myself. Anyway, so let's go to the next one, because this is another layer of this said parfait. Requires that grandfathered assault weapons are stored using a secure gun storage or safety device like a trigger lock. So now this is right out of New Mexico. This is some of the new stuff that they're coming up with of requiring safe storage laws. Also, Michigan has introduced it this year. It's still pending. So think about this from a practical executionable level. How would you know where to go and check and verify that actually is going on? Because the only way possible is if you knew where every single gun was, you knew the location of every single gun, and you knew every single gun had or did not have a safe or a lock. That's a whole lot of information that you would need to know, almost like a registry.
Mm-hmm. And enforcement. So, we haven't seen the full wording of the bill, but so if we're going to require safe storage, who's going to enforce that?
Correct.
Right? Who's going to check on safe storage? Because if you look at Europe, if you look at the UK or Germany, I'm sure one of the viewers can post in the comments down below, they have safe storage laws, and the gun police can just come knock on your door at any time and say, hey, we know you have this, this, and this. We want to see how it's stored. And if you're not in compliance, boom, instant trouble. And
if any of you think it can't happen here, this has been introduced in New Mexico and now Michigan.
Yep.
And the penalties are felonies.
Let that sink in. Let that sink in. So it seems harmless on the surface. It may even seem reasonable to some. Of course, you need to lock your firearm up. But on the backside, this has some very real dangers. And this is a way for them to jam up otherwise law-abiding gun owners and strip them of their rights, because the minute you get tacked with a felony, you're done with gun ownership for the rest of your life. And 100%. For them to do that over a safe storage law, knock on the door. We know you have this, this, and this. Let's see that braced pistol you registered last week and see if it's safely stored. Ooh. And you just happen to have it out because you're getting ready to go to the range. Well, why is this laying on the bed? Well, I'm getting ready to go to the range. Can you prove that? No, it looks to us like it's just laying on the bed. A child can get it. You're going to jail, sir. This is the danger of these things. Mm-hmm. And you may say this is hyperbole, or that we're reading into things. We're just trying to show you both sides, right? Yep. We don't know what the actual wording is going to be. We don't know what the enforcement's going to be. We're just trying to show you what it could be like. And even if it isn't like that in this particular bill, this is the direction they're attempting to go. And if you don't believe that, you're being naive again.
Correct. And so before you go into this next point, because this is you, baby, this one, I'm so excited for you to hit this one. This is the fly in the ointment, what we're about to cover. The stuff that we're covering right now, imagine having all of these things in place, but the argument was, well, it's up to discernment. It's not necessarily enforceable unless we discern that we're going to. Because the second that you do that, you will understand that that's exactly what we're dealing with right now with the ATF on embracing or not embracing certain parts of the pistol rule that was just introduced. You're leaving it up to have the potential for discernment or enforcement on a whim. That's why you don't have these things in place. You don't have these things in place so that someone who has a maybe not a amazing view of the Second Amendment can use existing law, or someone who does have a view of the Second Amendment, just say ignore it. You don't even want to be near that road. And that's the important piece. But this next one, oh, get it, Tim. I'm excited.
This one is really angering to me. So here they're telling you that you can keep your gun if you have them. You can even sell or transfer your guns if you have them, as long as you go through the appropriate steps. But if we take a look at this next bullet point, prohibits the transfer of high-capacity ammunition magazines. You can keep your magazines, but if you go to transfer them, you're going to break the law. Now, how is that a problem? Do you own an HK91? I do. You know how many 10-round magazines I have for my HK91? 0. I have Valmets from the 80s that were imported. They never imported them with 10-round magazines. I mean, they probably made them. I've never seen one, and if they exist, they probably cost $5,000. But the point being is, if you have any type of firearm that was made, in the 60s, 70s, 80s, maybe even the 90s, that had a proprietary magazine, a 10-round magazine was never offered for it, you can sell your gun, but you can't sell the magazine. And where do belt-fed firearms fall into this? What if you have the semi-automatic saw? What if you have a semi-automatic RPD? Can you transfer the belts, the links? Because in previous laws, when you read the verbiage, belts were banned. They were considered high-capacity feeding devices. So you could own the saw, you can sell the saw, but you can't feed the saw. Of course, the saw does feed from a 30-round magazine from the side or a 10-round AR-15 magazine. That's not the point. RPDs don't. But you see where I'm going with this. You cannot transfer your magazines. So yeah, that may seem fine for modern firearms. Almost everything made, in the last 20 years uses something like an AR-15 magazine, a fairly common universal magazine, or a SR-25 type magazine. But if you go back in time, there are a lot of pre-banned guns, if you will, a lot of guns from decades ago that use proprietary magazines. Those guns, you're just kind of out of luck there, buddy. You can sell your gun, but it's kind of worthless without its magazine. And that, as a collector, really angers me. I mean, that's absolutely ridiculous.
Well, that's a way that you can completely control functioning or not functioning. Yeah, you have your Second Amendment, but if you can't have anything to feed it, then that's a collector's piece. The point is, and then I'm going to go into this last piece. This last piece is, this is my little thing. If you're looking at guns as an object of it's a gun. That's not what firearms are. Firearms in the American history and in the current part of our world, in our Constitution protected rights, are a part of our history. They're a part of our legacy. That's one of the reasons the channel is called Second Legacy, because we have a legacy of Second Amendment rights ensuring our freedom. These are not items that you would collect like a car on a freedom level. Now, some people do. I know Tim does. But the point here is, this is something that is actively part of our freedom that is passed on to the next generation. And if you interrupt that chain, and they know this, you interrupt that chain, all of a sudden the importance of these things becomes derelict, and therefore they do as well. This is all a long play. The progressives from 1920 on have always done long plays. But anyway.
Well, it's straight out of the communist playbook. It truly is.
Oh, yeah, it is.
It's a generational strategy. The anti-gunners know they have time on their side, and they're just going to keep chipping away at it, because as we've talked about in previous videos, when we talk about reasonable restrictions, reasonable compromise, there's no such thing as a reasonable restriction or a compromise. Every time they come at us with bills like this is a surrendering of rights. We don't get anything in return. That's not a compromise. And what they're doing here is setting it up so 30 years from now, somebody that's 18 years old would be less inclined to go buy a rifle because they've just kind of fallen out of popular culture. It's not part of
Correct.
Americana anymore. And that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to strip this out of our culture. They're trying to strip this right away from us because this being the Second Amendment challenges their power, and they don't like that. This has nothing to do with public safety. Clearly, as we've already demonstrated, if these things are so dangerous, they need to be taken out of society. This bill doesn't do that. It tells you can keep them. So it's not about safety. This bill will do nothing other than encroach on your rights. It will do zero to stop any type of future crime.
And so now we're going to get into where they banned Jerry Miculek.
Yep.
All right, here we go. Check this out. Bans bump fire stocks and other devices that allow semi-automatic weapons to fire at fully automatic rates. Hold a phone. There is a clear definition in the National Firearms Act of 1934 that defines what a fully automatic machine gun is. And it has nothing to do with the rate of fire. It has to do with the fact that you pull down the trigger and more than one thing happens. A semi-automatic is a release and an action, a release and an action. That's the whole conversation around bump stocks. That's the entire conversation around those specific triggers that they just got a temporary restraining order out of for New York. The entire argument is what is a machine gun and what is not. The argument is not weapons that fire at fully automatic rates, because Jerry Miculek can fire at that rate and he can use a revolver to do it. Yeah. And that's the entire point. All of these things are based around a perception. They're not based around logic and law and all the things that we know that is on the playing field here. And the NFA, by the way, still an infringement. I'm not making that whole soapbox to open right now, but fully automatic rates is not the definition in the qualifying characteristic of a machine gun. And that's incredibly important to understand.
But this is also extremely dangerous wording because it is wildly ambiguous. So what happens when this bill passes and goes to the ATF for their interpretation? The ATF gets to define what a fully automatic rate is if it's not defined in the bill. And it probably would not be defined in the bill. They're just going to let it stand with fully automatic rates. Then the ATF gets to go, you know what, if you fire more than one round every 5 seconds, that's too fast.
Mm-hmm.
And
or the shorter cartridges, because they have a faster cyclical rate. Well, that's always a machine gun. So 22s,
right?
So
and literally they could take like a Geissele trigger that has a 2.5 pound trigger pull that I can literally fire at Jerry Miculek speeds. I have a very fast trigger finger, and I can bump fire from the shoulder, from the hip. I've demonstrated it in video many times. I can get a gun to cycle so fast that it'll malfunction because the mechanism can't operate as fast as I'm pulling the trigger.
Tim Flex.
No, he can do it without like bump firing. He's literally pulling the trigger. I'm with certain firearms, with super light triggers, I can ride that reset like he does, but he can do it with revolvers. I'm nowhere near it, Jerry Miculek. But what I'm saying is, it all comes down to this whole rate of fire thing and this ambiguity. And they want these laws to be ambiguous because that leaves the door wide open for ATF to do like what they've done with bump stocks and what they're doing with braces and what they would be more than glad to do with, Geissele triggers or any type of firearm that fires too fast. And then also consider this: if the firearm can fire too fast, that the gun itself breaks whatever this barrier is, this speed limit, then the gun itself can be classified as a machine gun.
Yes, a full
right?
auto.
So if it's just a standard mil-spec AR-15 trigger and I go out and make a video where I'm bump firing it and it's cycling at roughly the same speed, let's just say, an M60 is around 650 rounds per minute. If I can do 650 rounds per minute, well, look at this. You have other machine guns out there that have rate reducers in them that cycle right around 400 rounds a minute or 500 rounds a minute. That's not a very fast cyclic rate. That's like chuck, 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 right? And that's a machine gun. If you can get your AR-15 to fire that quickly with standard mil-spec parts and just standard parts, then can ATF go, that's fully automatic fire, and therefore that entire class of firearms is now banned. Not saying that's what they're going to do, but this is the door that this ambiguity leaves open.
Correct. And I think, Tim, the word you're looking for is readily convertible.
Mm-hmm.
I think, is that the term that we've heard a whole lot with in relation to everything?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
So you can readily convert it by how fast you fire it.
Exactly. If you're Jerry, you're out of luck.
Yeah.
All right, so now the last piece, and this is just the coup de grace. This has been one of the touching points of gun control arguments for the last year. If you've seen my channel or Tim's channel, you have seen this. The Age 21 Act. Under current federal law, an individual is required to be at least 21 years old to legally purchase a handgun, but only 18 years of age to legally purchase an assault rifle, such as an AR-15. This legislation would create parity in federal firearms law by prohibiting the sale of assault weapons to individuals under 21. I love when they use create parity. Why don't they say create equity? That's a buzz term they like. Basically, what this does is this puts the barrier of all your Second Amendment rights at 21 years old. Now, okay, here's the thing. You can log in. You can sign up for the military at 18. You can vote at 18. You can do a whole lot of adult things, enter into contracts at 18. You could even get married at 18.
Go to jail, be charged with a felony.
You could go to jail. You can do a lot of things, but all of a sudden the Second Amendment rights are a special right that you cannot have, even though they are a constitutional right. But no, you got to be 21. And by the way, why 21? Is that because it's the age of alcohol? Why can't it be 25, the age of insurance? Why can't it be 31? There are so many reasons and you said it earlier, which was very, very well said. The level of ambiguity is incredibly important as you go forward on these things, because this is around our rights. This is not around what shoes do you want to wear and what do you want for dinner. This is really important things, and not only for us in our current time, but the next generation that's going to inherit this fight. It's up to us where we leave it. Are we going to leave it on our red zone in the football field or their red zone in the football field? I mean, that's kind of the way I look at it. That's my analogy.
I absolutely agree. And guys, we're going to keep an eye on this. So right now, this is just being talked about. As I mentioned earlier, there's no bill number. This has not been introduced into the Senate. The companion bill hasn't been introduced into the House. We're going to keep an eye on it. We're going to keep our finger on the pulse. As you know, I am involved with Gun Owners of America, and, we'll be watching this. And if this becomes a true threat, we will make a video letting you guys know, hey guys, this is getting pretty dangerous here. It's time to start calling your representatives and becoming politically active. We will keep you up to date on the developments of this assault weapons ban. And hopefully this thing just dies. The gridlock in DC kills it, but we can't make those assumptions. We don't have that luxury. Our rights are way too valuable. Guys, we greatly appreciate you tuning in and watching today's episode. If you'd be so kind, like, share, and subscribe to this video, and let your friends know that we exist. Let them know about the Second Legacy, because it is important that we spread the word of the Second Amendment and that we let folks know that we can fight back. And we hope to be able to empower you with intelligent, well-vetted information as best as we can possibly do, to give you the information you need to be that political activist, to help make sure that generations to come can enjoy the same rights you've enjoyed throughout your life. Again, thank you for watching, guys, and we'll see you next time.